Hey guys, I just want to let you know that I've been revamping my website. It's looking really good. And it's a place where you can watch the podcast. It's also a place where you can sign up for my email list, my e-blast that I send out periodically. And if you listen to the podcast on Apple, make sure you hit the subscribe button. You subscribe to the podcast. Same with YouTube. Hit subscribe, but also notifications, because then they'll notify you, maybe not always, but a lot of the time, that the new podcast has gone up. Now, I want to talk at the outset about the suburbs, because it seems to me that this is where the battle for America's political future is being fought. Notice that America isn't just divided into cities and rural areas. The cities are overwhelmingly Democratic. Not all of them. There are a few red cities, but most cities are blue, and pretty heavily blue. The rural areas are heavily red. And interestingly, according to the Pew studies, these trends have been accelerating. The cities are becoming more blue and the rural areas more red. But 50% of Americans, 50% live in the suburbs. These are the rings around the cities. And these suburbs, which used to be overwhelmingly white, kind of white, middle to upper middle class, to some degree reliably Republican for many, many decades, these suburbs are now more diverse racially, more Hispanics, more African Americans. The old stereotype of blacks living, quote, in the inner city. A lot of blacks today live in the suburbs. They might even live in low-income housing, but there's low-income housing that is not the old tenement or apartment buildings, but in fact, standalone buildings in the suburbs. So the Democrats think that this is a huge win for them, because as America becomes more diverse, as the suburbs become more diverse, they have a built-in political advantage. In fact, they think this is how they won the 2020 election. They won the critical suburbs around Phoenix, around Atlanta, and so on. But I think what is very interesting is that when you look at this Pew data about the suburbs, you find that there are suburbs that have become quite diverse that nevertheless voted for Trump, and voted for Trump by decent margins. And what that means is that the fact that suburbs are becoming more diverse doesn't by itself mean that the Democrats are going to get those voters. They assume they are. But in fact, the voting bloc that they're getting most of is the kind of wealthy white vote. The wealthy white vote, which was again heavily Republican, has now drifted more toward the middle. Democrats are winning more of those voters. But the good news for us is that there are large numbers of Hispanics that are moving to the Republican Party, moving toward the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party has a lot to do to really win and lock in these guys. But think of it, Hispanics are working class, the middle class. They represent upward mobility, the attempt to sort of make your life better, a little bigger house, a second bedroom or a third bedroom, the idea of being able to have a good education for your kids. This is basically where Republicans can win these people, not just the Cubans and the Venezuelans who have memories of what's going on in Cuba or Venezuela, but also Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans. Now, for the first time, and I saw this really with Trump before, first of all, was the idea of being able to win not just middle-class blacks, but sort of ghetto blacks, ordinary, very poor blacks from inner city communities and poor blacks in the suburbs, moving to the Republican Party. Why? In a sense, they're moving because of wokeness. They hate this woke culture coming from the left. And the beauty of this is that the woke whites who run the Democratic Party can never fix this problem, because the only way for them to fix it is to become unwoke. And that's the one thing they're not willing to do. So they're going to try to browbeat Hispanics and browbeat the blacks into wokeness. And this is all just great news for us. Now, the GOP has a kind of winning formula. The winning formula is that we are a multiracial party, but multiracial, united around shared aspirations, shared dreams, or united around patriotism. We're united around the idea of prosperity and upward mobility. We're united around the idea of choice in education and excellence in education. And we're united around the idea of having a safe, lawful society. In other words, a campaign against the defund the police. The idea here that we need not only free communities, but communities that are also safe for our kids to play in and for people to walk around in. The Republican leadership, as usual, is kind of last to the multiracial picnic. They haven't opened up sufficient positions of leadership for Blacks and for Hispanics. They need to do that. But there is a window of opportunity here for the GOP to win the suburbs. And by winning the suburbs, you have a suburban rural alliance against the inner cities, which have become more and more unlivable, more and more infested with crime and drugs and homelessness. Let these be the kind of dysfunctional democratic pockets inside a multiracial Republican nation.